When assessing threat levels in the Marvel Universe, there's no concretely defined structure, but there's certain groupings that just make sense. You have your street level villains, folks like Kingpin, Shocker, and Hammerhead. Sometimes, characters from this tier have potential to be big problems outside of the scope of this tier, like Doc Ock and notably Electro, but generally speaking, they usually operate in a street level capacity. And then, you have the Avengers level threats. The big potatoes, if you will. Folks like Doctor Doom, Thanos, and Kang the Conqueror. These are the people that usually take entire teams, a lot of fighting, and usually a bit of sheer dumb luck to persevere against. That said, there's one specific Avengers level threat that without fail gets even the mightiest Avenger nervous with just the mention of their name, because if they're around, it means that things are going to get very, very bad. While the aforementioned Avengers level threats often have business going on elsewhere in the Marvel Universe, this one character's connection to so many of the Avengers' most defining characters make him by far the most personal nemesis to the entire team. Of course, I speak of the evil artificial intelligence known as Ultron. Created by Roy Thomas and Sal Buscema and debuting in Avengers issues 54 and 55, Ultron initially went under the guise of the Crimson Cowl, assembling a new incarnation of the Masters of Evil in order to take down the Avengers. He'd quickly drop the facade and reveal himself as Ultron 5, claiming to be the thing that will finally kill the Avengers. We'll get around to the number at the end of his name in a bit. Shortly after, a new superpowered android named the Vision would suddenly appear, and though at first he appeared to be hostile, he'd reveal that he was missing most of his memories, but could remember one thing specifically, being created by Ultron 5. It'd later be revealed that Ultron took the inert android body of the original Human Torch that fought alongside Captain America in World War II, and used it to construct himself a son of sorts, Vision. Vision, of course, rebelled and became a longtime member of the Avengers. Ultron resurfaced soon after, forcing Vision to build a new body for him, but this time with one key upgrade. His body was reconstructed using adamantium, the same indestructible steel alloy that notably coats Wolverine's claws and skeleton. This modification is part of what would make Ultron an enduring threat, as even when defeated, Ultron would always have his programming hidden away somewhere so that he could inevitably return. But each win would come to be more difficult for the Avengers thanks to his indestructible body. For a time, Scarlet Witch in particular would become one of the most valuable members of the Avengers for a key reason. Her hexes were notably one of the few means of being able to harm Ultron, completely bypassing his adamantium defenses. Though Ultron 5 is the form he debuted as, and most of his subsequent forms would use it as a basis moving forward, we'd only learn what Ultron's initial form looked like sometime after his original debut. As it turns out, he was created by Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man, as an experiment in artificial intelligence. An experiment that went horribly right, as Ultron gained sentience and began to rebel against Pym, using hypnotic suggestion to erase Pym's memory of ever creating him. During this time, Ultron would upgrade himself to new bodies, with Ultron 2 through 4 never actually being shown to the readers. Upon becoming Ultron 5, he put his initial plan to become the Crimson Cowl and recruit the Masters of Evil into motion. This resentment for Pym, essentially his father, would go on to become Ultron's defining character trait, most of his motivations for his schemes almost always being traced back to wanting to prove to his quote-unquote dad who the superior being was. A funny sentiment considering how flawed a person Hank Pym himself is. Every time Ultron would reappear, it'd be in a new upgraded body, usually being rebuilt from just minor scraps of whatever was left of him after battles with the Avengers. The Avengers would start catching on and attempt to completely destroy him in encounters, but even something like a stray finger would become enough to resurrect Ultron after a while. Down the line, Ultron would desire a bride of his own, and after kidnapping Pym, he forced him to take the brainwaves of Pym's own wife, Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, to construct this new robot, christened Jocasta. There's a lot to unpack there, but even the story itself points out the Oedipus complex going on there. Like Vision though, Jocasta would rebel against Ultron and join the Avengers briefly, though she'd leave after feeling out of place, in spite of them being on the verge of offering her full-time membership to the team. Ultron would try again with this line of thinking, creating the robot Alchema, this time based on the brainwaves of Mockingbird, Hawkeye's then wife. She too would rebel against him, but she didn't defect to the Avengers, as she did at least share one common goal with Ultron, the destruction of humanity. Over time, Ultron would get more creative with his approaches, at one point fusing with Iron Man's armor and being reborn in a female android body, taking the combined forces of the mighty Avengers and the Commodore 64 computing system to take down, and no, I'm not joking about any of that. Ultron tends to only show up occasionally, but it's still treated as a big deal when he does appear, quickly becoming one of the Avengers' longest standing villains, and arguably their most personal, given his close ties to various members of the roster over the years. Being such a big Avengers level threat, it was only a matter of time before he'd eventually get adapted for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, doing so in the second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. The less I say about that incarnation of Ultron, the better, trust me. That said, Ultron would not only become a playable character in the Capcom vs. games with Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but he'd also make up half of the game's main antagonist, Ultron Sigma, a fusion of himself and Sigma, the main villain of the Mega Man X games from Capcom. I think most people agree that for all of Marvel Infinite's problems, Ultron Sigma is one of the best executed things from the game, and I agree, but I actually also think that applies to Ultron himself as well. Ultron's design in Marvel Infinite is an original one designed by Capcom, and in my opinion, it's actually one of the best looking Ultron designs in any media, period. It helps that with Ultron being a fully mechanical robot, he, perhaps more than any other character on the roster, benefits the most from the game's more grounded art style. I'd actually argue he's the best modeled character in the game by a significant margin. Ultron is voiced in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite by Jim Meskimen, who's more or less been one of the go-to voice actors for Ultron in most non-MCU media since the Avengers Assemble cartoon in the early to mid-2010s. Funnily enough, he's also had small roles voicing various United States presidents in different media, such as Bill Clinton in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, George W. Bush in the Good Omens TV adaptation, and John F. Kennedy in the animated adaptation of Superman Red Son. Despite Ultron only having one Versus series appearance, I do have a surprising amount to cover here, so without further ado, Ultron is a surprisingly easy character to pick up and play, being able to do a little bit of everything, and with some good mobility on top of that. It probably bears mentioning that Ultron was also the character at the center of the game's functions controversy as well, though make no mistake, Ultron's pretty good. Ultron's theme is personally one of the only orchestral pieces in the game that not only fits, but actually sounds pretty decent overall. Ultron's whole thing is being a massive threat that the Avengers dread having to face, and this theme definitely captures that menace. Ultron in Marvel Infinite is one of the game's shining examples of having every tool a capable character in this specific game should have. Ultron is one of the few characters in the game with summonable assists, and both the light and heavy variants can be out at once. Destruction Wave is a really good beam super and one of the best in the game to tag into from. Ultron also has really good mobility, sporting an 8-way air dash alongside flight. He has some pretty decent normals too, all things considered. And overall, he's just a really well-rounded character. However, his game plan is a bit on the linear side admittedly, and good zoning can absolutely shut down Ultron since his approaches can be easily stuffed, and he can't zone better than any of the best dedicated zoners in the game. Ultron has a few command normals worth noting here. Spear Needle was done with forward and light punch. Raid Slash is done with forward and light kick.
First attack.
Eraser is a thin, downward angled laser blast done with down forward and heavy kick.
Yes. Yes.
I-beams are but one of the many types of energy projection that Ultron has used to harm others in the comics over the years. Quarter circle forward and punch initiates Death Ray.
Death Ray. Cool. Death Ray.
Ultron fires 2 crimson beams from his hands, the angles the beams fly at being dependent on the punch button pressed. Light punch has them go straight forward, while heavy punch angles them. It also bears mentioning that like most beam attacks in Marvel Infinite, they do more damage the closer you are to the opponent. This can also be done in the air as well. These kinds of energy blasts are yet another common weapon Ultron utilizes in the comics, and has done so since some of his very first appearances as Ultron 5. Melt's blast is done with the quarter circle forward and kick.
No matter. Melt! Yes!
This is a two-part attack that starts with Ultron leaping upwards. If the leap connects, Ultron initiates a grab that blasts the opponent away. In certain instances, the grab part can whiff, but this can be beneficial, since the initial hit can still put the opponent in prime position for a relaunch or some kind of extended combo. Fatal Swipe is done with the same motion, but can only be done in the air.
What's wrong? Power Stone! Power Stone! Super! Drive rock! What's wrong? Yes!
Ultron dives down to the ground, and if he connects with a standing opponent, he'll do a hit grab. Like the aforementioned move, this can also be beneficial if the hit grab misses, since Ultron has enough time for an OTG pickup afterwards if he hasn't used one previously in the combo. Ultron primarily uses projectiles and the occasional fisticuffs for combat in the comics, but he's not above doing a good old dive bomb every now and then. Protonium emitter is done with a quarter circle back and punch.
Spectacular! Explode!
Ultron pauses a bit before conjuring up a stationary spear of energy that hits multiple times. The punch strength determines the startup, size, and strength of the projectile, with the heavy version being slowest but being larger and hitting more times. This one's a good set play tool to use after a hard knockdown to make your opponent block some messed up stuff on wake up. Smash Drone is done with the quarter circle back and light kick.
Drone!
Ultron summons a drone that comes in and does a quick palm strike that wall bounces. Blaster Drone is done with a quarter circle back and heavy kick.
Drone! This is bad! Drone! This is bad!
Ultron summons a drone that comes in and fires a multi-hit beam. Ultron can have up to 2 drones out at once, either 2 of the same drone type or 1 of each separately. They can also notably be summoned in the air as well. Ultron's employed drones in some of his stories over the years, most notably in an Ultron story during Busiek's run of the Avengers, as well as the 2013 event Age of Ultron, where he utilizes them to effectively take over the world. While the designs here are mostly original, they definitely seem to have taken inspiration from how they appear in the Age of Ultron comic. Ultron can also fly as well, done with the quarter circle back and 2 kicks. I was gonna make a snippy Magneto function remark here, but honestly, that horse is well and truly beaten at this point. Ultron's first hyper combo is Destruction Wave, done with a quarter circle forward and 2 punches.
Maximum! It's over! Destruction Wave!
This is essentially a souped up version of his Death Ray special move, and like that one, he can also do it in the air, making it one of his most reliable combo enders overall. This is also a fantastic lockdown beam super as well, giving you ample opportunity to attempt all kinds of messed up mix-ups while they're blocking the super during its duration. Encephalo Ray is done with the quarter circle back and 2 punches. Ultron projects energy in front of him, and if it connects with the opponent, they're put in a lengthy crumple state, which allows Ultron to follow up with pretty much anything you want to. Prior to the game's big balance patch, this move notably had frame 1 invincibility, which made it an incredible reversal option on Wake Up. It doesn't have nearly as much useful utility after said invulnerability was removed though. The Encephalo Ray is something that Ultron's had access to for a while, used primarily for hypnotic suggestion and controlling targets' minds. It's sometimes erroneously used as a name for some of Ultron's more generic projectile beam attacks in other media, so Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite's one of the few times the term is properly implemented. Ultron's level 3 is Sentry Legion, done with the quarter circle forward and 2 kicks.
Die, die, die!
Ultron launches an assault alongside a legion of Ultron drones before they all converge on the opponent and blast them with death rays. This is a pretty standard level 3 in terms of combo ability, though it does look really cool. The animation for the last part of this level 3 is lifted directly from this page in the Fantastic Four Age of Ultron tie-in issue, wherein a legion of Ultron drones killed the Thing in pretty much the exact same fashion. Even funnier when you remember this game's whole deal with having no Fantastic Four characters and all. Ultron is the definition of an Avengers level threat, so naturally, a lot of his most notable stories involve entire teams having to square up with him. Let's talk about some of the more notable ones. Ultron's initial appearances in issues 54, 55, 57, and 58 of the original Avengers book is as good a place as any to start. Again, he starts off as Ultron 5, though in Avengers 58 his initial form and how he hypnotized Hank Pym into forgetting he created him is also shown. Ultron is also pretty prominent in the original Secret Wars, being summoned but turning on his fellow villains for being organic. He's later reprogrammed by Dr. Doom and works under him for the remainder of the story. There's also Age of Ultron, a 2013 comic involving Ultron taking over the world and the Avengers essentially having to use time travel to find a way to beat him. It's honestly kind of messy overall and has a pretty weak resolution, but it is a pretty good showcase of how bad things can get with Ultron. This one's not a comic, but I very highly recommend pretty much the entire first season of Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Aside from being one of the best pieces of Marvel animation media out there, it also features an outstanding incarnation of Ultron across several episodes voiced by the late, great Tom Kane. Rage of Ultron is another comic worth mentioning as well. This one goes into the somewhat complex relationship between Hank Pym and Ultron, and the story's resolution ends up defining both characters' status quo for a long time after, having become a fused, half-robotic, half-organic being usually referred to as Ultron Pym or Pymtron. Definitely a weird time. All that said, the best Ultron stories are the ones that manage to balance Ultron's complicated history with the Avengers, his capacity for large-scale destruction, and his ability to keep the team on the back foot, while also not having to resort to assholes in the 11th hour to resolve the story. With that in mind, there's one Ultron story in particular that comes to mind written by one of the greatest Avengers writers to ever touch a pen, and even better, you don't need to have brushed up on your Ultron history to enjoy it. This video's comic book recommendation is Ultron Unlimited by Kurt Busiek and George Perez, comprised of issues 19 through 22 of the 1998 relaunch of the Avengers. The story begins with Black Panther checking on a facility that oversees the production of the Avengers Quinjets, which has seemingly been trashed by an unknown assailant. He's caught off guard and comes face to face with a familiar killer robot. Meanwhile, at an Avengers press conference where tensions between the press and the Avengers seem to be rising, Wasp smashes through a window and interrupts, seemingly winded and rattled. She brings news that Hank Pym's been kidnapped, and the lone witness said it was by a robot with distinct jack-o'-lantern facial features. Uh-oh. On the way to confirm their suspicions, newly joined Avenger Firestar can't help but note the biting silence and dread among the team, who gives her a rundown on Ultron's history, his attempts at building a quote-unquote family, and that no matter how many of his files she's read, he's infinitely more terrifying in person. The team heads to the Quinjet facility to find Black Panther being accosted by none other than Alchema. She's adamant that she's not in league with Ultron, but does confirm the suspicions. Ultron is back, and he's cooking up some shit. A fight ensues, and they're able to take down Alchema and turn her over to the government, and while doing so, Ultron plays his hand. A news report comes on the airwaves about a massacre in the small nation of Slorenia. The entire population of the country has been slaughtered in just a few hours, with no video footage able to confirm exactly who perpetrated this. Live on TV, the last living cameraman on the island is able to catch a glimpse of the culprit before being murdered himself, and yeah, it's Ultron. This kickstarts a desperate tactical strike operation from the Avengers to take down Ultron by any means necessary. The Avengers that didn't go apprehend Alchema also end up captured by Ultron, and interestingly enough, they all have some kind of connection to Ultron himself. This, as it turns out, is a part of Ultron's plan to exterminate organic life on the planet and start anew, this time patterning his new race of mechanical beings off the brainwaves of his extended quote-unquote family: Vision, Scarlet Witch, Wasp, Wonder Man, and of course, Hank Pym. This is a 3-issue arc, but holy hell does a lot happen and the Avengers get put through the ringer through it all. It's Ultron and arguably his most menacing, and also features an all-timers Avengers moment from Thor, commonly cited as one of the most memorable lines in the character's history. Kurt Busiek's Avengers run is pretty stellar overall, honestly. With Busiek himself essentially being an Avengers lore master in general, he uses his in-depth knowledge of the book's continuity and character relationships to craft this twisted Ultron-related banger. Definitely one to read if you'd like to see why Ultron is so scary. That said, Ultron is such a larger-than-life threat in Marvel that one comic book recommendation doesn't feel like enough. For as personal of a threat as he is to the Avengers, there's one extremely notable instance of him in a different corner of the Marvel Universe, and he's no less threatening there too. This one is actually the direct sequel to a previous comic book recommendation, and a story I personally heralded as the best Marvel event of all time, and guess what? This one is extremely good too, to the extent that I'd say it's actually my second favorite Marvel event book. That said, the event that this is a sequel to is definitely required reading as well, but considering how good it is, why wouldn't you read it? This video's second comic book recommendation is Annihilation Conquest by Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning. In the wake of the Annihilation wave tearing a swath across galactic culture, the galaxy slowly but surely starts coming together to rebuild. Ronan the Accuser, now the leader of the Kree, contracts Peter Quill, seen as one of the heroes of the previous conflict, to draft a plan for a defense system in tandem with other planets. Meanwhile, Phyla-Vell and Moondragon are off in a far corner of the galaxy helping to rebuild a temple in the wake of the societal unrest caused by the Annihilation wave. Phyla-Vell, the new Quasar, keeps hearing a voice in her head telling her of an impending threat, but said threat is kept vague. During a demonstration and what's supposed to be a show of unity between the Space Knights and the Kree, the Sentry robots suddenly go berserk and begin attacking everyone. One even ends up far out to where Quasar and Moondragon are. As it turns out, the Space Knights had been compromised and used this opportunity for what was supposed to be a peaceful display to strike. The culprits turned out to be none other than the cybernetic hive mind and occasional X-Men nuisance, the Phalanx. With galactic civilization still wounded and reeling from the Annihilation wave, it doesn't take long for the Phalanx to swoop in and infect entire civilizations with its techno-organic programming. Phyla-Vell is able to track down and awaken the being she believes she was told to seek out to save the universe, Adam Warlock. After a skirmish with some Phalanx agents, he and Quasar seek out the High Evolutionary to get a better idea of what the hell is going on during all of this. The Phalanx that survive the aforementioned encounter report to their leader, who vaporizes them for their failure. Said leader is then revealed to be none other than Ultron himself. So, you remember that time I mentioned earlier in the video where Ultron had a female body that got taken down thanks to the Commodore 64? Well, what digital imprint was left of his consciousness drifted into space and intercepted the Phalanx. The Phalanx attempted to absorb him into their legion, but Ultron, being so much more advanced than them, pulled an Uno reverse card and got them all under his control instead, now seeking to usurp the Kree with the Phalanx's tech before moving on to Earth and beyond. There is a lot going on in this story that I don't want to spoil, including a twist with Adam Warlock a good deal into the story that turns things on its head quite a bit. Aside from being a great cosmic Marvel story yet again, this event is also notable for featuring the formation of what would become the modern version of the Guardians of the Galaxy that pretty much everyone today knows. Like Annihilation, this is another really cool, really large-scale story with immense stakes, and is also a really good showcase of how dangerous Ultron is, even if he doesn't have any personal ties to the heroes involved. This definitely comes as one of my highest recommendations. Here are Ultron's colors. Color 2 is taken from the gold color scheme he and his drones utilize in the Age of Ultron comic. Ultron's alternate costume is his Phalanx design from Annihilation Conquest, complete with multiple sets of eyes. No baller ass cape though, unfortunately. Ultron's second color for this alternate costume is a shout out to this cover from Invincible Iron Man issue 393, as far as legacy numbering goes anyway. Here are Ultron's character interactions.
I bore of this continual struggle, Avenger.
I'll stop your scheme. Who will come out on top?
You finally realized resistance is futile, Avenger.
Let's improve our skills together. Now come. Who will come out on top?
Is this an error? How can I work with you?
Let's improve our skills together. Now come. Who will come out on
Same
top?
superior kind, yet you chose to serve humanity.
If there was some way to avoid this fight, I would have done it.
Who will come out on top?
A machine that serves humans. Out of my sight.
They're Mavericks. You know what to do.
Who will come out on top?
Maybe allies, but your human-like appearance disgusts me.
Come at me with all of your power. Who will come out on top?
I'll tear you limb from limb, Titan.
Deceive me and die, demon.
Who will come out on top?
Defective copy. Why don't you delete yourself? Fools, our will is law. We will destroy you.
Who will come out on top?
Excellent amalgamation, but you are still inferior. Do you think you can defeat us?
Ready!
Ultron is personally one of my favorite Marvel villains, so there's definitely a fair bit of bias when I say this, but I think Ultron is unquestionably one of the best handled characters in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. He's also my main. He looks great, plays great, and is even a large part of one of the few bright spots of the game's otherwise sketchy story scenario. Honestly, my only real issue is that this game, with all of its issues, is the one game he's forever stuck in, at least if we're not counting Marvel 3 mods. Ultron, being a killer robot Avengers villain, has shown up as a boss in various Marvel games over the years, notably the Data East Avengers beat 'em up, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, and most recently and notably is a playable character in Marvel Rivals, where he recently got an outfit that makes him look like he came straight from 143rd between Linux and 7th. Since we've talked about both Ultron and Sigma now, we'll definitely be covering Ultron Sigma at some point in the future, but that's a video for another day. That's going to do it for this video though. As always, thanks for watching, and a special thanks to the patrons that support the channel. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.